Welcome to MINDSHOCK. This is your host, Bruce McGuire. And today we're going over the Final Destination franchise of horror films in the realm of Hollywood movies and entertainment. Obviously, here on MINDSHOCK, we discuss everything with logic and reason at the forefront, whether it's horror movies, conspiracies, true crime cases, or anything. If you want to help support the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell for notifications. If you're not getting them, you can become a free patron on Patreon to get free notifications. That way, YouTube's a little weird with notifications, especially on certain channels discussing certain subject matter. Like and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Patreon. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave in the comments section, or if you are with us here live in the live chat, I'll try to get to all of them. You can also help support the podcast by becoming a YouTube member right here on YouTube. All right, welcome everyone. We got Truth Trollette in here. Aaron Ladybug 83 says, I love this movie. Heracles, welcome. Ladybug 83 says, I really enjoy this channel. How can you not? MINDSHOCK's the greatest channel in the history of existence, is it not? Ladybug says, I like number 1 and 3 the most. I'm going to get into all of them. The general premise, whether it is or isn't the most original horror movie franchise ever compared to other franchises. Truth Trollette says, I don't remember much of them, so couldn't tell you. Ladybug says, I've watched them multiple times. One of my favorite movies. Truth Trollette says, they are trippy. Some people couldn't understand the concept of them even when it was explained to them. Yeah, so, yeah, we're going to get into that. They are a little tricky because seemingly there's an issue with consistency on how the rules of death go, the order of death, etc., etc. We're going to get into that. Aaron says, I actually had a premonition while on a plane. I started counting approximate seconds in my head. Exactly 30 of my head seconds later, it came true, and the engine on my side of the plane broke. Well, hopefully that didn't result in catastrophe, so you were just grounded? So this was while the plane was grounded? Or in the air? I mean, it's possible to only have one engine, but that would have to be some kind of emergency landing. Welcome, 83 Devil Dog. We got Ladybug 83 and 83 Devil Dog. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Is that too much of a coincidence? Aaron says, premonition while at the end of the runway. Engine broke while in the air. So what happened exactly? So at the end of the runway, so pretty much as soon as it was taken off? As soon as it was taking off, so then what happened? Did they have to land right away, or was it able to fly with one engine? Oh, okay. Went back and changed planes. Okay. So catastrophe averted. All right. So let's get into the general premise of these movies. So for fans of the horror genre, and these movies are really fun. Actually, why don't I start with this? Because this is something that kind of affects a lot with all genres. So basically, the issue, a lot of reasons some of these older horror movies are so fun is because not only, okay, so the era that it was made in. So for example, the Halloween, Friday the 13th movies, those are kind of like the two big dog franchises. Maybe Nightmare on Elm Street to an extent, but I was always a fan of Friday the 13th, more so than Halloween. Halloween was a little slow and boring in my opinion. The Friday the 13th slashers were just so much more fun. But, and some people consider that blasphemous. But no, I mean, I enjoyed both franchises. Actually, Nightmare on Elm Street, I was probably the least into. I don't know if I've even seen all of those. I don't think I've even seen all of the Nightmare on Elm Streets. Truth Roulette says, I was in Australia waiting on the plane to come back and they had to delay the flight to replace an engine and couldn't get a bolt out. waited on the tarmac for 4.5 hours. That's kind of sketchy. There's an issue with a bolt. That might be an important bolt. Welcome, Jess Palmer. So the era that, so the 80s were just really fun. So those the slasher films. So it's not just the film being fun itself, but going to the movies with your friends, or watching it on a VHS or a Betamax or a Laserdisc, dare I say, Laserdisc. Or for, if you were in Asia, maybe watching it on video CDs. But but it was just a fun experience in a fun era. Same thing with the 90s movies. Now, Final Destination 1, actually, I think that was 2000. So they might have shot some of it in 99. But I believe that was released. Yeah, it was released in 2000. It's St. Patrick's Day-ish, released in 2000. And so it's basically an early 2000 franchise. The only movie released after 2010 was Final Destination 5 in 2011. And of course, we have Final Destination Bloodlines coming up here in 2025 that's supposedly they're going to actually try to tie everything together and make it make sense. Will they succeed? I don't have high hopes. I do not have high hopes. A lot of people enjoyed Final Destination 5. I actually didn't. It was probably my least. 4 is pretty bad, but 4 is really interesting because they attempted to do something new in 4, which we'll get into. The Final Destination, which was supposed to be the final one, which is why it's called The Final Destination instead of Final Destination 4. I thought they tried some interesting things, and there's so many alternate endings and all of that. We're going to get into that. But Final Destination 6 Bloodlines supposedly explains how this all works. Now, I haven't watched the trailer. I don't watch trailers anymore because it ruins the whole movie. So I will watch it, obviously, when it comes out. I'm a pretty big fan of the franchise. In terms of which one I liked best, we're going to get into that in a moment. But let me just finish the point about eras. So the era in which these films were made, all the way up to the early 2000s, that was probably the last truly fun time for slashers. So you have the only thing that was pretty decent in recent times, maybe Happy Death Day. Happy Death Day was quite interesting, entertaining, but it just wasn't as fun. So I think that has a lot to do with just the era. The last couple years are just not, it's not a great era to be alive. Now, some people counter that point by saying once you get older, everybody says that. All the middle-aged and elderly folk always say that about whatever the current time period is. So in the 80s, people were talking about how great it was in the 50s and 60s. Now, I don't know. I don't think I can buy that. Because the 80s and 90s, and even early 2000s, people trash on the 2000s, but the early 2000s, not just pre-9/11, not just the whole year of 2000 and most of 2001, I would say 03, 04, 05, 06, 07, yeah, somewhere around 08, 09, 010, and 10, there was a big, deep slide. And around 2011, 2012, 2013, it was very evident that possibly the good times were over. And then obviously continuing into the event of 2020. So yeah, I think era has a lot to do with it. Just this is not as fun of an era to be alive. Technology has rotted everybody's brain. Everybody has TikTok brain. Politics has kind of taken over every aspect of everybody's lives 24/7. I mean, it used to be back in the day. So in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, there would maybe be, that one person, that one family member that was just hardcore into politics. Now, even the people that aren't hardcore into politics, they're just surrounded by so many people who are, and it kind of rots their brain as well. So it's just not as fun of a time period to be alive. And at the time these movies came out, most of the time the movies were fun, whether they were high-quality cinema or not. They were fun. and it was fun to watch them, and it was fun to be alive in that era. I would say quite unlike now. And a lot of that also has to do with the jaded nature of everything. Because when everything's on demand, at the tip of your fingertips, every time, at your fingertips, any second you want to watch something. See, back in the day, you needed a VHS, or it was on TV whenever it was on. There's no on demand. And or you had to go to the movie theater, so it was an event. It was exciting. The limited nature of it, by not everything being at your fingertips at every second, that's what made it fun. A lot of that is what made it fun. Now everything is just available 24/7 streaming, and it just takes a lot of the anticipation away. Just the spectacle is taken away from it. And you can draw parallels of that throughout history, whether you want to talk about the Colosseum, bread and circus, whatever. An event is an event, not just when you want to click a button and watch something and it's always available. That kind of takes the fun out of it to a certain extent. So, yeah, the early 2000s was probably the last truly fun time in the modern, semi-modern era. So that has a lot to do with it, and people remember some of these franchises quite fondly. All right, so let's go into the nature of the franchise itself. So, Death or the Grim Reaper coming for you, that's not necessarily an original concept. There were movies about that, but what Final Destination did that was super interesting. It was kind of a cerebral version in terms of order of death, skipping the order. Whereas older films about the Grim Reaper coming to get you, it was usually only coming to get one person. And so this one, and of course just the early 2000s time period, this was grunge, post-grunge, the post-90s grunge. You had edgy teenagers. I mean, it's just so very reminiscent of its time period. But again, it was fun. It was fun. I mean, if you want a good Grim Reaper movie, Meet Joe Black from 1998 with Brad Pitt and Claire Forlani. That was a very interesting one. That was pretty interesting. I'm trying to remember some older Grim Reaper movies. I mean, Cemetery Man 94 featured the Grim Reaper. Phantom Carriage 1921 had the Grim Reaper. Metropolis 27 had a version. Death Takes a Holiday 1934. On Borrowed Time, 1939, Seven Seal, 57, Mask of the Red Death, 64, Love and Death, 75, Monty Python's Meaning of Life, 83, Adventures of Baron Munchausen, 88, Scrooged, 88, Ghost, 1990. Is that the Swayze movie? I mean, that's not exactly, because they're not, I mean, death is also personified in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, 91. Shout out Keanu Reeves. That's kind of weird. I actually don't remember this one. Last Action Hero, 93, with Jean-Claude Van Damme. Or not Van Damme. Oh, actually, Van Damme is a cameo with Arnold Schwarzenegger in that movie. Apparently, Death... Ian McKellen plays Death at the end of the movie. I don't remember that. Cemetery Man 94, Frighteners 96, and then Meet Joe Black 98, Six String Samurai 98. And so those are kind of movies about death coming for you or some kind of personification of death. So Final Destination is not original in the sense, and in Final Destination, death doesn't really take a form. It's kind of portrayed as an invisible force. Although some believe that Tony Todd's character is Death, and we're going to get into that. But it's kind of weird because it doesn't quite match up. But Death as an invisible force manipulating the world to kill you, that I'm not sure that was ever done before. So that that aspect of Death, the Grim Reaper, etc., that I don't know if that was done prior to Final Destination. So the Final Destination series might be the most original incarnation as Death, as not a person, but as an intelligent force manipulating matter and elements. So let's just get into the breakdown of Final Destination. So straight from the wiki, Final Destination is an American horror franchise, includes 6 films, 10 novels, and 2 comic books. Yes, supposedly the novels actually get more into the theories. I haven't read the novels, though. It is based on an unproduced spec script by Jeffrey Reddick, originally written for the X-Files television series, and was distributed by New Line Cinema. Is that a Mandela effect? Because I remember looking up the history of the Final Destination films, and I do not remember it being an X-Files episode. All of its films are set around the premise of a small group of people who escape impending death after one individual has a sudden premonition and warns them about a major disaster that is about to occur. After avoiding their foretold deaths seen in the visions, the survivors are later killed one by one in bizarre accidents caused by an unseen force by creating complicated chains of cause and effect resembling Rube Goldberg machines, and then read omens in order to avert their death. And a Rube Goldberg machine, named after American cartoonist Rube Goldberg, is a chain reaction type machine or contraption intentionally designed to perform a simple task in an indirect and impractically overcomplicated way. So here's an old-time illustration of these type of contraptions. And that's the one, I mean, that's kind of a point against the series, because sometimes they really are, I don't want to say it stretches credulity, because if death is a force, a supernatural force that can do anything, I mean, it's not that it can't do, like, all of these intricate and excessive chain reactions, but what's the point? I mean, clearly death would be that powerful enough to do, to make one massive manipulation of the universe without the need for all these chain reactions. That's probably the biggest point against it. I mean, we'll get into the actual plot and the rules of all of this, which some people believe have plot holes, but Aaron says, it seems the novels provide a lot more detail than the movies do. That seems natural. The 2001 novel explained a lot. The screenplay was even better. Okay, who said the new Alien movie? Is that the one? It's really good. Oh, you're saying nefarious describes demonic possession. Yeah, that's the one subgenre of horror movies that for some reason I just don't like watching those. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's some kind of satanic occult subconscious influence that subconsciously I realize might have some kind of effect, like staring into the void, staring into the abyss, and the abyss staring back into you. I mean, pretty much all other genres of horror movies, I find them fun and entertaining, especially zombies. But But yeah, there's something about demonic possession movies that I don't get into those. I've seen The Exorcist, but I've actually seen most of them. I watched them a long time ago simply because, you know, if you're gonna be in film and cinema, I actually lived in Hollywood for a period of time. I did mostly indie stuff, nothing big. I did a little bit of writing myself, and you know, just from a historical education perspective, those were some recommended movies. The first Exorcist, anyway. But yeah, I wouldn't watch them again. Truth Trollette says it's not like the horror movies of possession. It's about a guy in prison. It's not like the typical possession horror movies, though. I mean, it's got a pretty wacky name. I mean, I could do haunting movies. I mean, Sinister is probably one of the creepiest. Sinister 2, I think, was decent too. Alright, so let's continue here. Yeah, supposedly, I forget which episode I talked about it in, but supposedly there's some really creepy, satanic, occult Illuminati stuff in that movie. Not just in the movie, but in the behind the scenes of the movie The Exorcist. So, I mean, I didn't know that at the time that I watched. I watched it so many years ago. I didn't watch it when it was released, but I watched it. I don't even know if I watched it in the 90s. Maybe. Or maybe early 2000s was when I watched it. I probably saw it in the 90s at some point. Yeah, I probably saw it at some point in the 90s. And, okay. So, in addition to the films, a novel series which includes the novelizations of the first three films was published 05 through 06 by Black Flame. A one-shot comic book entitled Final Destination Sacrifice was released alongside select DVDs of Final Destination 3 in 2006. And actually, you know what? You know what? Should I go out on a limb and say this? What was the last great slasher horror movie? Was it Final Destination 3 in 06? House of Wax was 2005. That was one of the last big budget horror movies. And that was with the one and only Paris Hilton. Yes, that one. The House of Wax 2005. I don't know. People hated it. I thought it was a pretty solid movie. I liked it more than the original 53 movie. So let me check the budget here. Supposedly the budget was huge. Yeah, $40 million. Wow. I mean, $40 million for a teen slasher? I mean, you don't see that happen. I don't know if that's happened since. So what is Happy Death Day? That was, let's look at the Happy Death Day budget here. Who's seen Happy Death Day? 4.8. Yeah, I mean, not even close. I mean, we're almost off by a whole zero. We're practically off by a zero. And then Eli Roth's Thanksgiving, which was okay. Let's see what the budget for Thanksgiving was. That one seemed pretty low budget. That's 2023. Oh, 15 mil. That's kind of crazy. I would say Happy Death Day kind of looked I don't know. They looked similar. Let's put it that way. They looked similarly budgeted. And Thanksgiving was 15 mil? That's wild. I mean, that's probably one of the bigger budget horror movies of the past decade or so. Who saw that one? Let me see here. Let me see here. Okay. So I actually, I made a post in the horror subreddit. I'm going to read it right now. When did the slasher movie die? Obviously, there are still slashers made today, and without getting into the weeds regarding 80s slashers and their early 90s decline, before Scream 96 brought it back, which is also a strange take in hindsight, because slashers were still relatively popular in the early 90s, with such greats as Candyman 92, although obviously production slowed versus the heyday in the 80s. Now, the Scream kick lasted well into the early 2000s, plenty of decent entertainment. Cry Wolf 2005 is a favorite of mine. Have I talked about that before? I don't even know if I've mentioned Cry Wolf on MINDSHOCK yet, but that is one of my absolute favorite slashers. It's pretty low budget. Let me get the exact budget here. $1 million. And it actually looks higher budget than, for example, Happy Death Day. I mean, Cry Wolf is so fantastic. I mean, actually, that might be my pick for when the slasher movie died. Although Final Destination 3, could we call that like a last hurrah? Or a dead cat bounce? So Cry Wolf 05, one of my absolute favorites. Whoever hasn't seen that and is a fan of slashers and horror movies, watch Cry Wolf from 2005, one of my favorites. Ladybug says Dawn of the Dead was good. Zombie movies, yeah. I mean, we're kind of talking slashers right now, but yeah, yeah, that was good. Aaron says, I have a friend in his 80s who knew several of the old movie stars. He has a lot of film reels, so that is very cool. Yeah, I'm a big fan of film versus digital. Lord Zed says Freddy versus Jason. I have to rewatch that. I watched that when it was released. Is that 03? Was that 03? I watched it right at the time of release. I think that was back, I wonder, because a friend of mine got it. I wonder if a friend of mine bought it on the street in New York. Because back, they used to sell movies that were theatrically released. And this was right, I'm trying to remember, this was right at the beginning of DVD. So the quality was fairly good. Lord Zed says it's about 03. Like, I have to rewatch it again. I haven't seen it since it was released. And I don't remember hating it. I don't remember thinking it was that great. Actually, the Friday the 13th remake, was that 2009? That was really good. Who's seen that? That actually, are we going to call that the last hurrah? Like, the last great slasher. I don't know. I might have to go Cry Wolf. Like, if we're talking, I would probably give it 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10 stars for Cry Wolf. Final Destination 3, maybe like a solid 7 stars. Like, that's more of a dead cat bounce. A last breath. Friday the 13th remake. That was 2009. That might have been like the last really solid one. $19 million budget. Yeah, it was slick. It was slick. I do not have a problem with the 2009 remake. So, let me finish my my post here on this Reddit. Oh, actually, I totally forgot Sorority Row 2009. Actually, you know what? Okay, let me finish reading my post here. This was a really good post that I made on the horror subreddit. Okay, Cry Wolf 2005 is a favorite of mine, and I might even argue that was the last really good one. Maybe even Sorority Row 2009. Yes, Sorority Row 2009. I like that better than the original as well, from the 80s. It's pretty solid. It's pretty solid, I have to say. Now, from reading about the behind the scenes and the making of, it was supposed to be even better. And I don't remember exactly what happened. It's been a while. I've probably seen it maybe, I haven't even seen it that many times. I've probably seen it 3 times. And Cry Wolf I've probably only seen about 3 times as well. But I really liked both of those. Maybe they're due for a rewatch. But Sorority Row is one of those movies that is better than it has any right to be. And that was 09. For those who haven't seen it. Really, really solid. It's so much better than it should be on paper. Like, on paper, it really shouldn't be good, but it is. It's just really solid. They don't make them like that anymore. Okay, some add Black Christmas 2006. I was not really a fan of that one. I saw that one in theaters. And My Bloody Valentine 2009. That actually was pretty decent as well. My Bloody Valentine 2009. I like that one better than the original as well. It's kind of about like the atmosphere, because some of these movies, they just have a really solid atmosphere. And the 3D was pretty cool. This was back when they were making almost everything in 3D. My Bloody Valentine 2009. So this was, I guess we could call all of these 2009 movies kind of like a dead cat bounce, like the last breath of fun, cool, good slashers. Because there's really not much after this. And you could argue these are all better than the House of Wax as well. Could definitely argue that. Who's seen all of these? Heracles says the original Texas Chainsaw was creepy and believable. Is that a slasher? I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess you could classify that as a slasher. Yeah, I like the original. I like all of them, actually. I like pretty much all of them except I haven't seen Leatherface, believe it or not. That's the most recent one, I guess. That was 2017. Haven't seen that one, but I did watch the Texas Chainsaw before that. I forgot what year was that. It's a couple years before that. And it was complete trash. But yeah, I liked the first four, I guess. Were all good. And the recent remake with, was it 2003 with Jessica Biel? That one was pretty good, too. Lord Zed says, I see so many scary movies, but not slasher. But favorite slashers, Halloween, Rob Zombies were awesome, in my opinion. They weren't bad. I like the Friday the 13th remake more than the Halloween remakes. But yeah, no, they definitely weren't bad. I don't know, they didn't really have the same vibe as the older Halloweens, though. Whereas the Friday the 13th remake still had that fun vibe. Ladybug says Hostel. Also, those are good, I think. I don't know if Hostel's a slasher, but yeah, the first Hostel was really good, yeah. It definitely still had that vibe. 83 Devil Dog says Strangers was scary. Is Strangers based on the Ketty Cabin murder case? Because I really don't like horror movies based on true stories. There's just something that just seems wrong about that. The Court of Public Opinion up in here. Gore isn't scary, it's just gore. Hey, all. Yeah, it's not about the gore, it's about the atmosphere. Like, I mean, the gore can be fun in certain contexts, but yeah, for me, it's all about the atmosphere. Ladybug83 says, Hostel's the one where rich people bid on people to kill for money. It's gory. Yeah, that one's really good. It's very atmospheric. I don't know if it's a slash. I don't know if it's not really a slasher, though. It's not really a slasher. We're talking slashers here. So yeah, I would say the last breath of slashers. We got Sorority Row and My Bloody Valentine 3D, both 2009. I don't know if anything truly solid, but let me finish my post on this Reddit, because I go over a few other ones here. So, if we count Sorority Row and My Bloody Valentine, both remakes anyway, that would put us at 2009. Friday the 13th remake reboot was also 2009, and that's pretty decent as well. It Follows 2014 is a curious one. Might be the most recent slasher-ish movie that had a similar vibe, entertainment value as previous slashers. Perhaps this is partially due to not being explicitly set in the year of release and quite limited technology. No rampant cell phones or modern computers, TV, etc. Who has seen It Follows? I don't know, we're going to call It Follows the Dead Cat Bounce. I mean, it's almost an anomaly, because you have 2009 and then nothing until It Follows 2014. It Follows is a very curious movie. I've only seen it once around the time of release. Who has seen It Follows? Court of Public Opinion says... Okay, hold on. Slashers. Court of Public Opinion says Hills Have Eyes. Yeah, that was earlier though. The Hills Have Eyes remake. I don't know if I'd call that a slasher either though. A slasher is usually when there's a killer taking out a friend group. Like the Hills Have Eyes is more like mutants killing everybody. That was 2006 was the remake, and that was pretty decent. That was pretty decent, but that's '06. So there were definitely some titles that were good. I don't know if I'd call that a slasher though. I mean, are they taken out one by one? Sort of. I don't know. I don't know if that constitutes a slasher. Court of Public Opinion says it's been so long, but yeah, I saw it. It's a lot of horror movie fans up in here. A lot of the usuals here in the chat seem to have seen a lot of these movies. Pete PDP. That's a tough one. Spiritual STD. It Follows. Yeah, I mean it had some originality to it. I have to rewatch it again. Supposedly there's a lot of subtext and symbolism that's kind of hard to catch on the first watch. But let me continue my Reddit post here. And of course, the other cool thing about It Follows is it's not set in a specific year. It's like ambiguous, and that contributes to the atmosphere. Obviously, certain franchises were still going. Let me address that here. Final Destination series, Final Destination 3, 2006, was probably the last one that truly felt like a slasher. The Final Destination 2009 seemed really off in tone and everything compared to its predecessors. Still, it was a slasher-ish movie released in 2009. Scream series, I actually liked Scream 3 2000 and thought the story fit as a trilogy. Not as fun as 1 and 2, but still solid in my opinion and true enough to the slasher vibe. Scream 4 2011 was a massive departure in tone vibe, and I thought it was complete trash watching it at the time of release. It's kind of funny reading what I wrote before. I mean, this is really well written, by the way. Not to pat myself on the back, but this is extremely well written, and it's kind of funny. It was complete trash watching it at the time of release. Perhaps I should have called it gutter trash. That's a little funnier. So I thought Scream 4 2011 was gutter trash watching it at the time of release. Next to Scream 5 and 6, however, total messes and complete departures in tone vibe exponentially more than Scream 4. It's a masterpiece, however. Yeah, I remember not liking Scream 4 at all, but after watching Scream 5 and 6, oh man, those movies are train wrecks. Yeah, those movies are just complete irredeemable trash. And yeah, that makes Scream 4 look good, no doubt. And any Scream fans in here? I mean, some people think Scream brought about the end of the slasher by slasher by injecting the meta style thinking. Because Scream was so meta in its analysis of horror films within the horror film. I mean, don't get me wrong, they were awesome and entertaining, but because of them, supposedly some people believe that brought about the genre as a whole, because it just introduced the meta. And that it seems to be kind of true, because look at all these other genres. Once you introduce meta, I mean, it's kind of over. It's like not fun anymore. I mean, it's fun for that movie, but then it's over afterwards. Welcome, the Ant 1747. I love Scream. Scream 3 is the best movie in the series, in my opinion. A perfect ending. I think you're the only one. Everybody hates 3. I really like 3. I like them in the order they were made. I think 1 is the best. 2 is really good. And I think 3 is pretty good. Court of Public Opinion said, like, found footage horror, Blair Witch. So, am I the only person that hasn't seen Blair Witch 1? Or if I have, I don't remember. I watched Blair Witch 2, Book of Shadows, which I really like and everybody hates. Supposedly there's a director's cut that's really phenomenal, never been released. The first found footage, was that Cannibal Holocaust? 1980-ish. Yeah, I'm a horror movie fan that has not seen the original Blair Witch. It just looked stupid to me. Like, I don't know, I just never wanted to watch it. But the second one, because the second one's not found footage, the second one is traditionally made film. The Ant one 747 says, I don't understand why Scream 3 is hated. It had the best villain, Roman, and touched upon the dark side of Hollywood. I think it's hated because some people think it's a bit of a parody, and it's just in a cash grab, and mostly just contract fulfillments. There's one or two plot holes in it. I forgot what they are. There's like one or two seeming plot holes. I watched it relatively recently, maybe a year or two. I watched the whole. I think I watched all of them again before I watched Scream 5 and 6. I might have watched 5 and 6 back to back. I was late to the game. I don't think I watched 5 when it was released. I think when 6 came out, I rewatched 1 through 4 and then watched 5 and 6. And yeah, 3, there seemingly are some kind of plot holes in 3. Unless they're not plot holes, like I think there might have had to have been an additional killer. I forgot what it was. People did write-ups on it. I don't want to get super into Scream here. We're supposed to be analyzing Final Destination, but Lord Zed says Edward Scissorhands. Oh, the Ant 1747 says I have yet to see Blair Witch as well. It just looks so terrible because it looks like such cheap found footage. Like, I don't know. I know it was made on almost no money, but there's just something about it that makes me not want to watch it. just from the previews or whatever. Because I remember everybody liked it when it came out. Everybody said it was the scariest movie. I just had zero interest in watching it and zero interest maintained. But the trailer for Blair Witch 2, which doesn't really have anything to do with Blair Witch 1, I don't believe. I mean, I think not really. Like, you don't have to watch 1. And Blair Witch 2, Book of Shadows, I thought that was really well made. And again, the director's cut has never been released, which is supposedly way better. Court of Public Opinion says, are you too afraid to watch Blair Witch, Bruce? It's okay, we understand. Heracles says, Children of the Corn was scary when I was 10. Yeah, I wouldn't call that a slasher either. Ladybug83 says, watch it, Bruce, and make a video on it. I honestly don't know if I could get through it. It just looks dumb to me. It just looks really dumb. I don't know. Yeah, Children of the Corn was good. I liked it. I think I watched most of them. I might not have seen the last couple, though. I might not have seen the last few. So let me finish my post here. The Halloween series, Halloween Resurrection 2002, was the last in the original series. I actually like that too, and still true enough to slasher vibe in my opinion. The zombie reboots 2007, 2009 were cool, but Rob Zombie, but different in tone. Halloween 2018 to 2022 didn't work at all for me. Completely different in tone, style, far beyond the zombie takes. Wrong Turn series. Oh, yeah, Wrong Turn 1 was good. Big fan of the first, 2003. Second, 2007, wasn't that bad. Wrong Turn 3, 2009, now moving to borderline watchable, with 4, 2011, and everything after pretty much unwatchable, unless for a so bad it's good experience. The tone vibe is simply too different from what came before. Haven't seen the 2021 reboot. Has anybody seen the 2021 Wrong Turn reboot? And Wrong Turn also, I don't know if that's technically a slasher, but maybe. Anybody seen the 2021 Wrong Turn reboot? Texas Chainsaw Massacre series, which is slasher-ish. Big fan of all the originals, and the 2003 remake was incredibly entertaining. 2006 entry was meh. And Texas Chainsaw 3D 2013 was incredibly tough to get through. Yeah, that's the garbage one. Again, massive departure in tone vibe. Haven't seen Leatherface 2017. So perhaps I would say the slasher film died in 2009. The last year with solid slashers being released with the same feel the genre is known for. For example, the Nightmare on Elm Street reboot 2010 was a disaster. Man, that movie was bad. Whereas the Friday the 13th 2009 reboot was pretty solid. Obviously, there's more to this than simply the year, just demonstrating how the change in tonality and vibe for slashers, especially within franchises, seem to have drastic differences depending on the year in which they were made. It Follows 2014 might be called a dead cat bounce. Anything I missed in between 2009 and 2014 and since 2014. Seems like there is just nothing in tonality or vibe true to the slasher since 2009. Even random bad slashers from before 2009 with a certain budget can still maintain the tonality and vibe, like House of Wax 2005, whereas even high budget slashers post 2009 can't seem to do it. So what does everybody think of my analysis here? I'm going to go through some responses in this Reddit thread to my post there. Lord Zed says, I've seen it. I don't remember much. I watched a lot of movies like that a while back. Lord Zed says, Corey Feldman should play a slasher Seagal tries to stop. Steven Seagal in the slasher, that'd be phenomenal. The Court of Public Opinion says, when there's so much years between a series of movies, how to stay true to the movie's original tone but still change with the times. I think Friday the 13th, 2009 was a good example of that. But that's pretty much all I have. Because I thought Friday the 13th reboot, 2009, was pretty good. Also, the Rob Zombie's Halloweens were pretty good. I didn't like the newer ones, but his were good. Court of Public Opinion says, I don't think I saw the 2009 one. Oh, man. If you like horror movies, you have to watch that. That was the perfect generational upgrade to modern times while still maintaining the vibe of the originals for the most part. I mean, it could have been better, of course, but it was solid. It was just really, really solid. I'm afraid to watch the new Wrong Turn because it just looks like trash. It just looks like complete trash. Complete gutter trash. Court of Public Opinion says, I will watch after this stream. I'm in the mood now. Lord Zed says Terminator. Terminator. Oh, man, that's funny. They need to make a Bigfoot Terminator movie. But yeah, it was funny because I think Steven Seagal has a higher death count than all the villains in all slasher movies combined. Which is hilarious. All right, so here's some responses to my my post here. A few of my favorite slasher movies of the past 5 years, but I'm sure there's more. Sick 2022, haven't seen that. I think that might be, is that COVID? Is that a COVID slasher? Fear Street Trilogy, haven't seen that, but I was a big fan of the books back in the day. The Conference 2023, haven't seen that. Nobody Sleeps in the Woods 2020, haven't seen that. Thanksgiving 2023, I did watch that. That was Eli Roth's, the director of Cabin Fever and Hostel, and it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great either. It was not great. And, oh yeah, Totally Killer 2023. I did watch that, and that was pretty bad. That really kind of exemplifies the Gen Z, kind of like a Gen Z type movie. It's just bad. I mean, the concept is cool, because, so Totally Killer, for those that don't know, I would say Happy Death Day might be the best recent slasher. It's like a Groundhog Day horror movie. But Totally Killer, I don't want to say it was horrible, but it was so Gen Z while flashing back to the 80s. Yeah, I don't know. Has anybody seen that? I was not a fan of Totally Killer. And that's kind of a good example because the era we're living in now is just so bad that even these filmmakers, I mean, it's just terrible. And the ending is pretty terrible. Totally Killer 2023. When the infamous Sweet 16 killer returns 35 years after his first murder spree to claim another victim, 17-year-old Jamie accidentally travels back in time to 1987, determined to stop the killer before he can start. It just did not nail the vibe. There was actually, so the movie, was it, let me see which movie this was. So there was a movie with Matthew Perry and Zac Efron, 17 Again. That was from 2009. Again, it seems like those the 2000s, pre-2010 is just the last time solid movies were made. This one was a lot better flashback-wise. Might have to rewatch that one again. I've only seen it once. And there was also Touchback, like a football, the back time travel or redo, life redo. Was it Touchback? Was it Touchback, Flashback, Touchback, like the football one? That was pretty decent too. What year was that? That might have actually been after. Let's see. Touchback was 2011. Okay. Yeah, it wasn't bad. It was not bad. I thought it was pretty decent. Decent. Better than anything coming out now. Like, Happy Death Day was really the anomaly, because that was a well-made film. But I guess this modern era is just a lot less fun, so. Alright, let's see if anybody mentioned. So here was my take on it. I checked out Thanksgiving 2023. Didn't realize it was Eli Roth directing until I saw his name in the opening credits. Was a fan of Cabin Fever and the first Hostel. Both pretty true-to-form horror films. This was actually a decent attempt. Probably the best attempt at a slasher in recent years. I think I wrote this before I watched Happy Death Day. I would put both of them up there. Happy Death Day and Thanksgiving 2023, probably the best attempts at a slasher. If he had made it completely grindhouse style, like the trailer for Thanksgiving back in 2007, set in the early 80s with film grain and all, it might have really been extraordinary instead of the watered-down version we got. The ingredients were all there for a decent film, even set in the 2020s, but just seemed too rushed and try-hard in certain ways. Also, the finale, teased on social media in the plot, was cut short in favor of a rehashed warehouse-style showdown. We'll definitely check out the sequel when that comes out. I think the Thanksgiving 2 is coming out soon. Thanks for the recommend, though we'll check out Totally Killer next. And of course, there are the triggered goofs hallucinating that I was saying that the slasher movies aren't made anymore. Obviously, they're still made. Here's a really good post by Gate Knight 04 in response here. I don't think the public's love of slashers ever fully died, but studios have been cramming supernatural movies down our throats since the success of Paranormal Activity in 2009. That was actually pretty decent for a footage type movie. And that cycle still hasn't finished yet. The primary reason for this is because it's much easier to get a PG-13 rating for a ghost movie, so they have a much greater chance of making money with a wide potential audience than they do marketing a gory R-rated slasher that not every theater is going to screen. Obviously, there are exceptions still exist, but note that most of the slashers you mentioned are all from established properties like Scream, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. Studios do not like risk. 2008 was a huge financial crisis, and major film studios have been very cautious since then. Actually, that's a great point. Because of the 2008 crisis, basically the movies that were made in 2008 that came out in 2009, those were like the last good ones. DVD sales are mostly a thing of the past. Remakes and movies based on established properties are everywhere. Studios need to do everything they can to make money on ticket sales, and a huge demographic potentially being unable to see their movies in theaters is not a risk they want to take often. This has mostly relegated slasher movies to the indie film festival scene, but they will come back eventually. I do not enjoy Terrifier and am baffled that so many people rave about it. Yeah, that looks like pure garbage. But if the slasher genre is going to make a mainstream comeback, having a new, very popular slasher franchise that makes legitimate money is the way to do it. Studios are very monkey see, monkey do, so if something becomes successful, other studios will follow suit. So have patience, the paranormal era will end soon enough. Now, here's my response to that post. Solid post. So, regarding the 2008 crisis, this actually might be the main explanation here. Sorority Row 2009 had a budget of $12.5 million, grossed $27.2 million. My Bloody Valentine 2009 had a budget of $14 million and grossed over $100 million. So it seems it would still be worth it to move forward. Streaming didn't completely take over until a number of years after this. I wonder why there weren't more solid slashers between 2009 and 2015. And I mean, I think it might all go back to 2008, because if those movies were all greenlit in, let's say, 2007 or whatever into 2008, even though it was 2009, they were just fulfilling contractual obligations, so they wouldn't necessarily be greenlighting that much in 2009, 2010. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, that might be it. And I continue the post here. I guess what I don't understand is why there aren't more indie slashers like there were in the 90s, early 2000s, made for cheap, but still maintaining a certain tone, vibe, and delivering on the entertainment value while making money. For example, Cry Wolf 2005 was made on just $1 million and made $32.5 million. In my opinion, it is light years ahead of much higher budget slashers of the past decade, certainly. I forgot about Ready or Not. Ready or Not 2019 was pretty good. $6 million budget, making $57.6 million. Yeah, that's not really a slasher, but one would think slashers could still work, but your point about random paranormal ghost flicks raking in more money consistently would explain this. I suppose talent is an issue too. Past 10 years, more and more young people want to be YouTubers, TikTok stars, influencers, and not actual actors in film or even writer-directors. I actually forgot I posted that, but that's a good point as well. Like, there really aren't that... Like, how many new actors are actually good and charismatic and make you want to watch the movie? Of the new Gen Z, Gen Alpha people. Court of Public Opinion says, Hollywood was already going broke by '08. You couldn't get that big cash like in the old days to finance. Internet changed everything, then they started using CGI. Yuck. Yeah. Lord Zed says, does Frailty count? Bill Paxton slashes a lot of people. Frailty was really good, but no, that's not a slasher. Lord Zed says, Mind Games 89? That sounds familiar. I'm pretty sure I have that movie. Not sure I watched it. Court of Public Opinion, I also enjoy religious horror like Stigmata. Stigmata was a phenomenal film, but I actually don't like that kind of subject matter at all. Like, I don't like religious horror. Something seems satanic about that. But that was a well-made film, and it has a really good vibe. Was that 98 or 99? Yeah, that was solid. Yeah, I really like the vibe of those movies. Oh, you know what other was a good one? Soul Survivors with Eliza Dushku. Who's seen that one? I watched that when it came out. That's 2001. That is such a fun one for those who haven't seen it. That is a super fun slasher. Slasher-ish. Paranormal slasher. I don't even know what you would call them. I don't even know the genre of that movie. Teen horror, maybe? Teen horror slasher-ish or slasher adjacent. This one's kind of slasher adjacent. Soul Survivors. Yeah, there's no movies like that being made now. Just this kind of vibe. I think also there was a certain amount of competency, like from cinematographers and editors. I mean, everybody here's nowadays, you know, everybody's so minimum effort cash grab. Like, people throw around the phrase cash grab in the 80s and 90s, early 2000s, but even those cash grabs, there was a certain amount of pride in one's work. Doesn't seem to exist now. Splattergut responded here, the golden era ended around 88, well and truly dead by 96, and bifurcates into various reactions to the golden era and reactions to those reactions. Those strains have never truly stopped. The lineage leading to Terrifier, for instance, never skipped a beat. Focusing only on franchises kind of renders the discussion pointless. So Splattergut, I think, kind of missed the point there. I didn't focus just on on franchise. Business Purge said, I think you already covered it. When the Elm Street remake underperformed in 2010 and they didn't get a sequel to Friday the 13th made, Platinum Dunes shifted to cheaper originals and they hit a home run with The Purge in 2014 right off the bat and never looked back. And then Blumhouse was doing mostly their own thing with limited location supernatural movies. When Paranormal Activity repeated as a hit the second time in 2010, the whole market shifted. That's actually a really good post right there. That actually, yeah, that's quite a few factors there. So the underperformance of the Elm Street remake, and for whatever reason, they didn't make a sequel to the Friday the 13th reboot, which they should have. That probably would have continued. And then The Purge and other Paranormal Activity shifted the whole market. Alright, so that was my post there just to set the stage. Now we're going to get into Final Destination. It's a long setup there. But it had to be done. It had to be done to set the stage here. But yeah, if you haven't seen Cry Wolf, check out Cry Wolf. It's phenomenal. Lord Zed says, Bruce, you gotta see The Endless. Not a slasher, just the scariest I've seen. The End. Why does that sound familiar? Let me see if I've seen that. The Endless 2017. No, I have not. I think you brought it up, though. I forgot the name of it. There was another movie I saw that was really creepy that just reminded me of. I want to say it was between 2009 and 2014-ish. Something with an R. I thought it was Revelation, but I don't see anything about Revelation as a horror movie from 2009, 2014. Maybe it was 2007. I don't remember. Somewhere between 2007, 2014. It was a super creepy, low-budget movie set in somewhere in the South, the American Southwest. I cannot remember the name of it. It was really creepy, though. Man, I really can't remember it. Yeah, I don't remember. I do not remember. I remember it was really freaky, though. But no, haven't seen The Endless. Oh, Resolution. Wow. How is it? Lord Zed, how many movies do you know like the back of your hand? That sounds familiar. Let me double check that it is in fact that movie. Oh, is that 2012? Yes. Yes, this is it. How the heck did you do that? Resolution 2012. Not a slasher, but a super freaky movie. How would you compare that to The Endless? Oh, same filmmakers. Okay, there you go. That's so weird that I didn't know that they were the same filmmakers, but I just looked up The Endless and it reminded me of Resolution. Now I'm gonna have to see it. Now I'm gonna have to see it. Wow. Okay. That's so crazy because I did not know. Lord Zed says The Endless was better, if you can believe it. I can believe it. It's just Resolution just had such a creepy vibe. I've never rewatched it. Let me. So, I don't even remember a lot about it. I just remember that it kind of blew me away in terms of creep factor. So, resolution here: a man imprisons his estranged junkie friend in an isolated cabin in the boonies of San Diego to force him through a week of sobriety, but the events of that week are being mysteriously manipulated. I actually don't even remember the plot. All I remember is that it was really, really creepy. Okay, so I'm gonna have to watch their other movies then because yeah, I mean they're it's not like an 80s 90s slasher vibe or anything like that, but it's probably the most inspired horror filmmaking I've seen on the low budget side. Man, okay, I got some homework. All right, so let's continue here with the Final Destination series. We got a little bit off track here, so I mean, setting the stage for slashers, but so okay. Final Destination 3 in 2006 had that comic book, and a comic book series entitled Final Destination Spring Break was published by Zenescope Entertainment in 2007. I'm surprised they didn't make a. I'm surprised they actually didn't make more Final Destination movies. Because they made one every 2-3 years until 2011, and then nothing until 2025. That's kind of crazy. I mean, more than almost a decade and a half goes by from Final Destination 5. The franchise has been praised for its innovative premise of death as an invisible force instead of a usual slasher antagonist, and the creativity of the film sometimes convoluted and tense death sequences. Background: Final Destination was written by Jeffrey Reddick after having read a story about a woman who was on vacation and her mom called her and said, "Don't take the flight tomorrow. I have a really bad feeling about it." I mean, that's kind of almost like a. I remember reading stories like that in random horror short story compilations, like back in the 80s and early 90s. I mean, that's not really a unique concept. I still can't believe Lord Zed brought up The Endless, and I bring up Resolution, a movie I haven't even thought about since I watched it, just based on vibe, and it turns out it's the same filmmakers. I mean, it's just crazy. The coincidence stack is growing. Court of Public Opinion says Pulse was good too. Early days of the internet. Are you talking about the Japanese version or the American version? Pulse was really good. That was 2006 with Kristen Bell, who is pretty trash, but that movie was good. That definitely had the vibe. That was 2006. Well, when I talk about the atmospheric vibe, it's like movies can't. I just haven't seen anything that is able to match it. There was also the Japanese remake, the American remake of the Japanese version of, was it Shutter? Let me see if that Shutter, that was decent as well. That had the vibe. Wow, that was 2004? Wow. That's weird. That's so long ago. Oh wait. Shutter is the original version, or is that, wait, is that Thailand? What country is this? Is this Thailand? Yeah, it's a Thai movie. It was 04. Yeah, so the remake was after that. That makes more sense because I remember watching later. So the remake was 2008 with Joshua Jackson from Dawson's Creek. Wow. Oh, you know what other movie was good? That Tooth Fairy movie. What is it? Tooth Fairy horror movie. Let's see what the name of that was. Darkness Falls, 2003. That's crazy underrated for those who haven't seen that. Oh man, the atmosphere in that movie is absolutely phenomenal. Darkness Falls, 2003. Not a slasher, but a really, really solid horror movie. Yeah, they definitely don't make anything like that anymore. Court of Public Opinion says, I never saw the Japanese, but let's talk about The Grudge. Oh, what about The Ring, if we're going there, in Japanese remakes? No, not Shutter Island, just Shutter. Lord Zed says, bro, that is mind-shocking you brought up Resolution for real. Synchronicity. Yeah, especially it's a low-budget movie that nobody's ever heard of. Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I had no idea how could, yeah, and because I don't remember any of their names, I just saw the movie poster for Endless, and it immediately made me think of Resolution, which I didn't even remember the name. I thought it was Revolution, but it's Resolution, and I was so shocked that you knew the name of it just from my description of American Southwest. I didn't even remember that it was like a drug junkie related. I just remembered it was really weird, and you immediately called it crazy. All right. The Rings, what was the latest Ring movie? Rings with the guy from Big Bang Theory? That was pretty bad, though. Okay. Anyway. All right. So, let's get back to Final Destination, of course. But yeah, Darkness Falls 2003. That's definitely on my top 10 list as well. Okay, so Final Destination, written by Jeffrey Reddick after having read a story about a woman who was on vacation and her mom called her and said, don't take the flight tomorrow, I have a really bad feeling about it. The woman switched flights and the plane she was originally supposed to take crashed. Originally having written the script as an episode of The X-Files, Reddick decided to turn the script into a feature-length film at the behest of one of his New Line Cinema colleagues. After developing the feature idea, New Line Cinema hired Reddick to write a screenplay. James Wong and Glenn Morgan were later brought on to write the shooting script, making alterations to comply with their standards. And I think the original, it was just a bunch of random adults, and then they changed it to a high school French class of high school students that all knew each other to kind of match up with the latest teen slasher trends. So, okay. You know what else is kind of interesting? If you haven't checked out my 9/11 series, apparently there were dozens and dozens of celebrities. More celebrities than there were first-class seats on the 9/11 flights that said that they were on the 9/11 flight, and then all of a sudden they had rerouted their stories. I think I went over 3 hours of stories, and I was not even halfway done. I have to do a follow-up episode on that. Okay. So Final Destination 1 in the original Final Destination. Okay, so we're going to go into spoilers here. So, spoiler alerts for all of the Final Destination films. In the original Final Destination, high school student Alex Browning, Devon Sawa, boards Voli Airlines Flight 180 with his classmates for a field trip to Paris. Before takeoff, Alex has a premonition that the plane will explode in midair, killing everyone on board. And the 180 number, so 180, half of 360, half of a circle. whatever that means. So it interrupts death circle. I don't know if there's some symbolism there. Alex has a premonition that the plane will explode in the air, killing everyone on board. When the events from his vision begin to repeat themselves in reality, he panics and a fight breaks out, which leads to several passengers being left behind, including Clear Rivers. So this character is named Clear Rivers, played by the one and only Ali Larter, which is kind of hilarious because I was just watching Landman with Billy Bob, and she's in that. So it's kind of crazy. The synchronicity is just not stopping. But think about the name Clear Rivers, like clear as a river, Clear River. Carter Horton, played by Kerr Smith, also from Dawson's Creek. Billy Hitchcock, played by Sean William Scott from American Pie. And Valerie Luton, played by Kristen Cloak. Terry Chaney, played by Amanda Detmer. And Todd Wagner, played by Chad Donala, who witnessed the plane explode moments later. Afterwards, the survivors begin to die one by one through a series of bizarre accidents, and Alex attempts to find a way to cheat Death's plan before it is too late. 6 months later, Alex, Clear, and Carter travel to Paris to celebrate their survival, believing they have finally cheated Death. However, after Carter is crushed by a giant neon sign that falls from a building above, they realize that Death's plan is still in action. And that's one of the best endings, too, because Final Destination, I mean, that ending, I don't even remember the endings to the other ones. There's alternate endings as well, but the ending to the first one is pretty awesome. Final Destination 2, picking up 1 year after the first film, features college student Kimberly Corman, played by A.J. Cook, heading to Daytona Beach for spring break with her friends Shayna, Dano, and Frankie, played by Sarah Carter from the Black Sash Kung Fu TV series with Russell Wong, which we went over extensively on MINDSHOCK, coincidentally. Alex Ray and Sean Sippos. En route, Kimberly has a premonition of a huge car pileup on Route 23, killing everyone involved. She stops her SUV on the entrance ramp, preventing several people from entering the highway, including Thomas Burke, played by Michael Landis, Eugene Dix, T.C. Carson, and Rory Peters, played by Jonathan Cherry, Kat Jennings, played by Keegan Connor Tracy, Nora and Tim Carpenter, Linda Boyd, and James Kirk, Evan Lewis, played by David Petcow, and pregnant Elizabeth Hudson, played by Justina Machado. While Officer Burke questions Kimberly, the pileup occurs as she predicted. In the days following the accident, the survivors begin to die one by one in a series of bizarre accidents. After learning about the explosion of Flight 180, Kimberly teams up with Clear Rivers, the only survivor of Flight 180, to try to save a new group of people from death. This time, that survivors are told that only new life can defeat death, and they must stay alive long enough for Isabella to have her baby. It is later revealed that Isabella was never meant to die in the pileup, and Kimberly drowns herself in a lake so that she can be resuscitated by emergency staff, thus granting her new life, saving her and Officer Burke. Now, that is problematic for a lot of reasons, because what is it? So you die and then you're brought back and that's enough to cheat death? There's a lot of problems there. We're going to be going over some of these, I don't want to call them plot holes because they may or may not have explanations, but I'm just going to call them potential problems. The Court of Public Opinion says only Jeebus can cheat death. Yeah, I mean, after I go through all the movies, then we'll rank them and go over the possible plot theories and explanations. Although the new movie is interesting because I'm going to have to do a follow-up episode after watching the new one, which comes out May 2025. So, Final Destination 3 has high school student Wendy Christensen visiting amusement park. Oh, some people think that Kimberly survives, but there's actually a deleted scene. I don't remember which Final Destination it is. There's either deleted scene or alternate ending where she does die. So, anyway. There's a lot of discussion on whether or not that's canon or not. Final Destination 3 has high school student Wendy Christensen, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, visiting an amusement park for grad night with her friends Kevin Fisher, Ryan Merriman, Jason Wise, played by Jesse Moss, and Carrie Dreyer, played by Gina Halden. As Wendy and her friends board the Devil's Flight roller coaster. Interesting name. Wendy has a premonition that the ride will crash, killing everybody on board. When Wendy panics, a fight breaks out. Several people leave or are forced off the ride before the accident occurs, including Kevin, Wendy's younger sister Julie, played by Amanda Crew, and students Ian McKinley, played by Chris Lamche, Aaron Ulmer, played by Alex Johnson, Luis Romero, played by Texas Battle. That's an interesting name. This actor's name is actually Texas Battle. First name Texas, last name Battle. Okay. Frankie Cheeks, that's an interesting name, played by Sam Easton. Ashley Frund, played by Chalene Simmons. Ash Lynn Halperin, played by Crystal Lowe. And Perry Malinowski, played by Maggie Ma. When the survivors start to die one by one in a series of strange accidents, Wendy and Kevin set out to save those who remain after they learn of the events of the first two films. They also figure out that the photographs they took at the park have hints of their deaths. Most of their attempts are futile with the exception of Julie and themselves, leading them to believe they have cheated death. However, the three coincidentally cross paths 5 months later and are caught in a horrifying subway accident. So again, are these potential plot holes? Because why would death just take a 5-month break? So death is just killing everybody, day after day after day that's so-called survived as a result of the premonition. So, I'll get into more of the plot once I go over all of the outlines here, but... And why would the photographs... They keep adding new things, like the photographs. If you take photographs, they'll have clues. Why would that be? So, and a lot of this is going to go back to, is death simply just messing with everybody? So is the premonition from death in order just to screw around with people? And why would that be? Is death just bored? The trickster, death is a trickster spirit of sorts? Or is the premonition not from death, but possibly just some kind of spiritual type force, or just the person is kind of, has medium-like qualities, or some kind of clairvoyant qualities that is they're able to pick up energy from the universe like a prophet of sorts. So that energy that they're able to pick up, that is giving them the premonition, and it has nothing to do with the entity death. And then obviously death doesn't like to be cheated. But again, why would death just randomly take these long breaks in terms of time? Did he go on vacation? You would think death is still claiming lives each and every day. So yeah, that's an issue. There's also alternate deleted scenes and alternate endings for all of these movies. So The Final Destination 2009, I think this was the most interesting one. It was probably the worst one in terms of how it was made, but plotline I thought was really interesting. So in The Final Destination, college student Nick O'Bannon, played by Bobby Campo, visits the McKinley Speedway for a study break with his friends Laurie Milligan, Chantel Van Santen, Janet Cunningham, played by Haley Webb, and Hunt Wynorski, played by Nick Zano. While watching the race, Nick has a premonition that a race car crash will send debris into the stands, causing the stadium to collapse on the guests. When Nick panics, a fight breaks out and several people leave before the accident occurs, including his friends Laurie, Janet, and Hunt, security guard George Lanter, played by McKelty Williamson, and spectators Andrew Kuzer, played by Andy Kuzer, played by Andrew Facella, must be a coincidence, Samantha Lane, played by Krista Allen, Jonathan Groves, played by Jackson Walker, Carter Daniels, played by Justin Wellborn, and Nadia Monroy, played by Stephanie Honore. Once again, the survivors are killed in a series of strange accidents, except for Janet, who was rescued moments before her death. This leads the remaining survivors to believe they have cheated death, until Nick has another premonition of a disastrous explosion at a shopping mall, which he manages to prevent, saving himself, Laurie, and Janet. 2 weeks later, Nick realizes the mall disaster vision was only meant to lead them to where death needed them to be, and all three are killed by a runaway semi. So the reason The Final Destination 2009 is so interesting, first of all, there's an alternate ending where they survive. But okay, I think there might even be 2 alternate endings. So is this premonition coming from death itself? So death is delivering the premonition to get them to where they need to be. But death, why would death need to do that? Because he could just come after them one by one like he usually does. So that doesn't make any sense either. Unless, so another theory presented is that death is kind of offering a challenge. So he sends the premonition to people that are supposedly worthy of cheating death. And if they can cheat, they can get away. It's like death giving a second chance, so to speak, as part of some kind of game. And that's a weird theory, too. Now, I think the books might get more into it, and I'll go over. I haven't read the books myself, but I'll go over the plot lines there and possible theories on what is causing the premonitions and what happens when you cheat death, or if it's even possible to cheat it. Some people think Tony Todd's character was able to cheat death, which is why he knows so much about it. Some people even theorize he actually killed somebody else. So you can go life for life. So if you kill somebody, then you can take their, like, if they weren't scheduled for death. So if they weren't scheduled for death, if you kill them, and this is a really dark theory, and you can imagine where this could go. I don't know if they're going to do, like, again, I don't know. I haven't watched the trailer, and I have not read the plot synopsis for the new Final Destination, and I won't until I see it. So that's Final Destination Bloodlines. So I do wonder if that's the plot of Bloodlines. I don't think it is, but I wonder if you kill somebody, then death skips you permanently. Or you get to live as long as the life that you took was slated to live. The court of public opinion says, but Bruce, does that mean they'll never die, or it is a temporary cheat? So according to this particular theory, I don't want to call it my theory. I don't know. My theory, so the original theory, I just read it online as a generic theory that you can take the life. I just thought of it a little bit further, where I suppose it would buy you the time of the life you took. So if the life you took was supposed to live 80 years, then that's how much you have. So you just substitute it. But if they were supposed to die kind of soon, then it doesn't buy you that much more time. But what if you kill a bunch of people? I mean, I don't know. How do you make this deal with death? Is there like a protocol? I don't know. But let me keep going through the synopsises here. But the reason I think the Final Destination 2009 is the most interesting is because of this extra wrinkle. Final Destination 5, 2011. In Final Destination 5, Sam Lawton, played by Nicholas D'Agosto, is on his way to a corporate retreat with his colleagues. While they cross the North Bay Bridge, Sam has a premonition that the bridge will collapse, killing everybody on it. Sam manages to persuade several of his co-workers to get off the bridge before the accident occurs, including Molly Harper, played by Emma Bell, Nathan Sears, played by Arlen Escarpeta, Peter Friedkin, played by Miles Fisher, Dennis Latman, played by David Kocher, Olivia Castle, played by Jacqueline McCanns Wood, Isaac Palmer, played by P.J. Byrne, and Candace Hopper, played by Ellen Rowe. After Candace and Isaac die in bizarre accidents, Sam is warned that death is still after the survivors, and told that if he wants to live, he must kill someone who was never meant to die on the bridge. Wait, what? Wait, so that's where that theory came from? Wait, warned by who? Oh, wait, was Tony Todd? Actually, I don't even remember Final Destination 5. Okay, so that's where the theory comes from. Okay. So I guess I read it online. I don't even remember anything about 5. Maybe this is why. I wonder if Tony Todd was the one that said that. I remember nothing of Final Destination 5 for some reason. I've only seen it once. I think I've seen all the other ones 2 or 3 times, but I've only seen Final Destination 5 once. I didn't really like it, but a lot of people like it. So you can claim their remaining lifespan. Olivia and Dennis are killed before they have a chance to save themselves, but Nathan claims the lifespan of a coworker when he accidentally causes his death in a warehouse accident. Peter attempts to kill Molly, jealous that she survived instead of Candace. He eventually gains the lifespan of an investigating agent, but is killed by Sam before he can kill Molly. So, okay, so even if you claim someone else's lifespan, that doesn't mean you're not going to die, because somebody else could still kill you. But that means death is not going to come for you. So another human can still kill you. But death design will not come for you. So the investigating agent... Okay, so Peter attempts to kill Molly. He eventually gains the lifespan of investigating agent, but is killed by Sam before he can kill Molly. Sam and Molly later board a plane to Paris, which is revealed to be Flight 180 from the first film. And this is an interesting twist. This was really well done and possibly saved the entire franchise. But what's crazy is they never made another movie. So they just never made another one until this new one coming out now, over a decade and a half. When the fuselage is torn apart by the exploding engine fragments, Molly is sucked out of the plane while Sam is killed in the subsequent explosion. The landing gear is sent flying forward towards New York City and crashes into a cocktail bar, killing Nathan, since the co-worker whose life he claimed had a terminal illness and was due to die any day now. Okay, so now we have it. Man, I remember nothing of 5. So that's the angle they had in 5, that if you kill somebody... Man, I remember nothing of 5. That's weird. Huh. This is weird. I need to watch 5 again. I think I remember thinking about all of this before 5 came out. And there were people who were bringing up this theory before 5 came out. So, okay. Hold on one second. Okay. So, alright. Let's rank these movies. Lord Zed says, dude, I don't like it. Code Republican says, didn't it have to do with the Mothman, the one with the bridge? Which one are you talking about now? No. Final Destination 5 was not Mothman. Mothman Prophecies was a really creepy vibe. That's one of the creepiest movies ever made. So, other theories being discussed are that death wants people to cheat the death. That's why the clues are given. So, some people believe anybody can theoretically have the premonitions if they're perceptive enough. Like, if they actually are sensitive enough to the energy of the universe. But people that watch through all the movies, supposedly there's little clues about what's going to happen. And it's almost like an opportunity to cheat death if they take the opportunity. I mean, it's really... So there's basically 2 schools of thought. Either the premonitions are coming from death himself, or they're just the perceptibility of people. Other people think that death is kind of like a trickster devil type entity that's playing with its food. And that's why the premonitions are given, and the orders can be changed, and all of that. Other theories are that the premonitions are not from death, and the people that have premonitions and cheat death, death kind of takes it personally and makes the follow-up deaths much more gruesome than the original death, as a way to get back those that cheated him initially. And supposedly nobody can truly escape death. So, on the Final Destination subreddit, here's an interesting post by Successful Bet on this theory: why death does what it does. While rewatching Final Destination and watching theory videos, I ended up coming up with a theory about why death does what it does. Its design, its list, everything. In Final Destination 2, Rory and Kat and the other survivors explain that they cheated death because of death's own actions. For example, Rory avoiding death because the sign crash at the end of Final Destination 1 distracted him, and Kat avoiding death because Terry's bus crash death ended up delaying the bus that would prevent her from getting into a later accident. Some people claim death kills the people that cheated it because it ruined its design, aka pissing death off. But why would death get pissed off by its own design? Notice how death comes for the people that have premonitions, right? My theory is that all the people on death's list are all visionaries. The only reason why one person on the list were able to get the visions is because they were able to manifest the visions in time, because the accidents that would happen later on would help manifest it. Now you may be thinking, why would everyone on the list be a visionary? Well, you see, in the Final Destination movies, there are other people near the accidents that end up surviving, but coincidentally don't end up on death's list. Even in the premonitions, they end up dying before the main characters do. So death is targeting the main characters because they are all visionaries. The reason it's doing so is because by keeping them alive, it's ruining his future design. Letting the main characters all end up manifesting their visionary powers and changing the course of history by letting them warn other people about death, essentially keeping people who are supposed to die alive. Another reason to support this theory is the new life theory. The visionaries may get their premonition powers because it's genetic or hereditary, meaning that by giving birth, it transfers the gene to the offspring, making a new visionary. This makes death end up having to remove them from their list because they have a new visionary to deal with. This theory can also be supported by the upcoming movie Bloodlines. Why would death be targeting the bloodline of a survivor? Because they are all visionaries. Anyway, that's my theory. So this was posted a whole year ago. Now, the new Final Destination movie is called Bloodlines, but we don't really know what that means. I'm not going to read the synopsis. I don't want to ruin that movie because it didn't come out yet. Okay, so what does everybody think about this theory? That death is simply targeting people who are potential to have visions because they could ruin the design far worse later on? So death is taking its chances with creating all this chaos. Welcome, Sirius Business. That's an interesting theory. Okay, you have to really think about the filmmakers. There's several different writers and filmmakers, especially in The Final Destination, where, it's really tricky. It's really tricky. So we have multiple theories here, including death wants people to be able to cheat death if they're worthy enough to do it. Like, it's almost like death is seeking out worthy adversaries because then they could save people. Or the premonitions are coming from a different force. whether any kind of spiritual force, the divine, a force for good that is in competition with death. And if the humans are worthy, they can make use of the premonitions and save themselves and others. But I don't know. It's just kind of weird. I haven't seen any theory that kind of fully encompasses everything. So in the Final Destination wiki, there's a write-up here on death. Let's go through this real quick. In the Final Destination franchise, Death, also known as the Grim Reaper, is an active, cunning, volatile, supernatural personified force and the series' main antagonist. While invisible to people, it nevertheless makes a somewhat noticeable and ominous presence wherever it goes and can manipulate any aspect of an environment to its will. Although the character of Death is never seen, in truth it is an entity that wants its design to never be violated. It has been highly suggested that death essentially programs the events of a person's entire lifespan, ultimately deciding where, when, and how they die. Should anyone deviate or cheat from what Death has set for them, whether deliberately or not, Death will punish them by using his servants to inflict the most gruesome and torturous death. Despite it often being called cheating or avoiding death, there are moments where Death seems to have planned for the survivors to escape as they were supposed to die later. And the visions were to help them get to that right place at said right time, or to get Death more souls in a quicker span of time. So that's kind of an interesting wrinkle there, where the premonitions are coming from Death in order for them to get to Death design easier or better. I mean, that's kind of weird though, because why would that need to be done? I don't know. Because I mean, if Death has the servants, or basically forces, objects, whatever, you would think Death could get to anyone anywhere, so why would the premonitions be needed? I mean, again, this is just a write-up on finaldestination.fandom.com/wiki. So this is not directly from the filmmakers or anything. The evidence for this seems to be in the finale of The Final Destination, where Nick O'Bannon realizes that he and his friends were meant to die in a truck crash all along, rather than a cinema explosion. Or the ending of Final Destination 5, where Death planned to tie up a loose end from one incident and wipe out more people in one go. I mean, is death so are the premonitions coming from death as simply a form of efficiency? But then why? But that doesn't make any sense, because why is he gonna? For those that cheat death, it's not really cheating if that was all the design. So if that was all the design, why would they need to be punished with more torturous deaths? I mean, we seem to be caught up here in a paradox of sorts. The person who receives the vision and successfully allows people to escape from their planned death must be involved or at least witness every future death on their list. That's kind of curious, but only if they try to stop it, though. So if they didn't try to help their friend from dying, I mean, then they wouldn't. But on the other hand, okay, hold on a second. Is it all just a form of self-fulfilling prophecy? But why would it even be necessary, though? I guess that's what I keep coming back to. Why would that be necessary? Because death can manipulate all of the elements and matter and all of these things in the universe. So why would any of that be necessary? Death maintains a strict order, and unless people die in the specific original vision, death spares them from any future death in its plan to kill the survivors, maintaining its specific plans and their unfortunate problems of being caught up as bystanders, such as people in Final Destination 4 who are in the cinema which explodes, who are left unharmed. Yeah, that's a curiosity as well. And well, how true are the visions anyway? I mean, is it possible? Is it possible if death is trolling, death can give false premonition visions in order for a specific desired outcome? And what would happen? I mean, this part of the reason this series is so fascinating is trying to decipher all this. And of course, some people think that there are no real answers, and that the filmmakers are just making whatever, and they leave all of this open-ended on purpose and making all of these deleted scenes, alternate endings, just so there could be as many interpretations as possible. And that's a pretty good theory as well, but it's still fun to think about and logically discuss. Court of Public Opinion says, "What scares you, Bruce?" Lord Zez says, "Only Steven, I mean Sensei Mojo Priest." Austin MP88 says, "I'm too scared to watch Final Destination." Court of Public Opinion says, "Right, if death is ultimately in charge, he's not worried for our entertainment, Bruce." Yeah, I still can't help but think there's definitely there's an answer here, even if the filmmakers don't know it. So the filmmakers created all these variables. We're solving for X. I think it could still be solved even if the filmmakers themselves couldn't solve for X. Because who said death is in charge, though? Because if death is simply one particular element of the universe, entity within the universe, and death still has to play within the rules of the universe, kind of like the Illuminati with their predictive programming and the symbolism, and supposedly like the revelation of the method where they have to show what they're doing and they can't violate human will, and if you ask a direct question they have to answer whatever as if they're chess rules for the universe. What if death has to operate by the same rules, where death can't violate the rules of the universe? He can only operate within the rules, and that's why all of this is happening the way that it is. But we don't know what those exact rules are, and without knowing it, we can't figure all this out. But I'm going to get to the books, because supposedly the books have more information. But let me finish reading the wiki here, and then we'll get to the books and see if we can figure this all out. Court of Public Opinion says it's pinning down the rules that's the problem. Yes, because they're not explicitly stated. And it's very possible the filmmakers themselves didn't want to tie themselves down with specific rules, so they left it open-ended on purpose, so that way they could make all these movies. And nobody can definitively say that there's a plot hole. Because the rules aren't explicitly given, so then we don't know if the rules are violated if they're not given. Which is kind of smart from a filmmaking franchise point of view. Okay, so death seems to have both a form of respect, however grudging that may be, and the ability to know when it shouldn't draw out someone's death, such as with clear rivers. Clear knew what to look for in the signs death would leave. And death gave her a quick death and an explosion, something which featured in all of her escaped deaths too. No fewer than 24. So supposedly she cheated death 24 times, meaning death respected her enough to make it quick, but was also clever enough to know that she was dangerous, as she could see signs and escapes, so took her out as quickly as possible to ensure she didn't escape again or help other people escape, once even breaking its own list to try to finish Clear off. Yeah, that's interesting. So death doesn't have to follow its own list. Death itself implies that the survivors escaping is actually making future incidents worse and worse, not just for themselves, but for others too. And that it is not a malicious entity, merely one tying up the checks and balances that control the world. Okay, let's go through. So before I continue that, let's get to the death design on this wiki. So William Bloodworth to Alex and Clear said, what you have to realize is that we're all just a mouse that a cat has by the tail. Every single move we make, from the mundane to the monumental, the red light that we stop at or run, the people we have sex with or won't with us, the airplanes that we ride or walk out of, it's all part of death's sadistic design leading to the grave. And what's curious is taking some of these screenshots. So this was Clear Rivers trying to figure out death's design here. Death's design refers to a series of events designed by Death itself. Details of Death's designs are revealed by William Bloodworth throughout the franchise, but it's not clear how he knows them. It's not clear, even to Clear Rivers, it's not clear. During the survival days of Clear Rivers, she was following the design and marked events related to it on the wall in her room of the Stony Brook Institution Psychiatric Treatment Center. So here's another potential plot hole. So at Stony Brook, so she's in this padded room, whatever. What's to stop death from causing like an entire gas leak in the entire building and everybody dying? So is death, so if it's not everybody else's turn to die, is that the only thing? But why couldn't there have been some kind of an issue with just Clear Rivers' room? Because, I mean, it still needs air supply. I mean, death could have worked with whoever's bringing her, like, I know they bring the food through, they made it pretty thorough. But again, death could have tried to get her before she even got to the room. But even when she's in the room, everything's padded, whatever. How could they have guaranteed that a spark, like maybe the new nurse is smoking and then the smoke gets on the plate and it falls and it lights the whole place on fire or whatever? There could have been, like, it just seems strange that death just gave up. But let's continue this wiki read-up. Premonition. The people who had the premonition are psychics who were all of the sudden capable of seeing the future. Order of death. Those targeted by death after they survived an event they were originally supposed to die in are killed in a specific order. The order is usually the same one from what should have killed them. The targets are sometimes collectively known as Death's List. Death has killed people throughout different orders. In Final Destination, the death order was followed the explosion ways in Flight 180. In Final Destination 2, the death order was turned backward of the premonition, which was caused by the deaths of the Flight 180 survivors, though Clear speculates that this may not have been intentional on Death's part, merely death tying up the loose ends left over. In Final Destination 3, the death order was still based on the order of death, but also on the seating on Devil's Flight, and the photos taken have clues to how they might die. And why would the photos have clues to how they die, though? See, that's another curiosity. So are there other forces battling with death, or is this just death? You know, is this like a serial killer calling the police station and taunting the police? Is this all the taunts of death by offering clues to escape it while being confident that they can't escape it? And if they do escape, the death is going to be more and more gruesome depending on the amount of times they escaped. In the Final Destination, the death order was followed the order in the premonition, except Jonathan Groves, who died out of order by not changing seats. Cheating death, intervention. Intervening in someone's death as someone who is on death's list can hinder the design and cheat death, but it will only skip the one who is saved. After the first turn, death will cheat by turning back to the one who was saved before. Saving yourself or being saved by someone who isn't on death's list does not count. This rule can't defeat death at all. And another reason why this franchise is so interesting is the rules are quite intricate here. I mean, there's a lot of intricacy going on here that you typically don't get in some of these brain-dead slashers of the 80s and the 90s. And by brain-dead, I don't mean non-entertaining. They're highly entertaining, but they don't have this level of intricacy. Welcome, Matari Sensei says, this is my favorite horror series. It's so good. It's pretty darn good. It is pretty darn good. It is so interesting, and I didn't get to the books yet. Have you read the books? Because supposedly the books have more information on how death works. But I'm just going through the wiki here. New life, according to William Bloodworth, only new life can beat death. In an alternate ending of Final Destination, Clear Rivers had a baby with Alex Browning, although he is dead. So she and Carter Horton beat death. Yeah, I remember that alternate ending. That was really cool. In Final Destination 2, Kimberly Corman beat death by attempting to drown in a lake. Then she, in quotations, died for a short period of time before she was resurrected by the doctor, thus granting new life and becoming one of the only 2 survivors who did not die by the end of the series. However, in one of the alternate endings of Final Destination 3, it's revealed that both Kimberly and Thomas Burke died while being sucked into a wood chipper. If one counts that as canon, then it means no one in the series survived cheating death. Yeah, that's a curiosity. That's one of the most important things, I think, in this entire breakdown. So hold on a second. Another thought I had... Okay, hold on a second. Baby... Okay, they didn't die... Oh, so Clear Rivers at the psychiatric facility again. Let's say there's a fire in the whole building and they're evacuating. Death could easily just kill Clear Rivers by allowing the other people to evacuate, but causing some kind of an issue with locks or whatever. Because death can manipulate matter and forces, so death could clearly cause a fire in the whole psychiatric facility, or a gas leak or something, allow all the people that aren't supposed to die yet to escape except for Clear and still take her out that way. So that's an issue for me. Just like a padded room just doesn't seem enough to beat death when death can just cause a fire in the entire building. I mean, that was one of the things that I had an issue with plot-wise. Matari Sensei says, I didn't even know there were books. Yeah, supposedly they're kind of rare books, hard to find. I might have to see if I can get them. The Court of Public Opinion says, a good writer knows when to walk away and let the reader take the reins. Yeah, I still can't help but think they at least have some ideas, because of the deleted scenes and the alternate endings, it seems like they do have some kind of vision, but they don't want to go all in on it. Possibly hedging and thinking they might think of something else better down the line. The Court of Public Opinion says, wait, is the name Claire like clairvoyant? No, her name is Clear. Clear Rivers, like a clear river. Clear is her name. I've actually never seen that name before. But it's an interesting name. But yeah, so there's no reason why death couldn't have gotten her in the psychiatric facility. One of the survivors, Isabella Hudson, had a baby. She was not meant to die in Route 23, so she couldn't help Kimberly and Thomas with cheating death. Despite new life defeating death, it does not save the mother giving birth to the child, with death intending to claim Abigail... Okay. What is this? Okay, so this is from the books. Final Destination, If Looks Could Kill, which was published November 29th, 2005. So this is a reference here. So Yeah, that was the reference there. It does not save the mother giving birth to the child, with death intending to claim Abigail Foster in childbirth until Sherry intervened. Steal another's life. According to William Bloodworth, if you kill someone who is not in death design, you, as the person who is to already be dead but had cheated death, receive the remaining life left from the person you killed. Peter eloquently calls this kill or be killed. Yes, some people also point to this being where the series jumped the shark. Because is it better that this is one of the rules, but it's never explicitly given? And now that they revealed too much in Final Destination 5. Because it was almost better thinking that Bloodworth maybe did this, but it was never explicitly stated. So 3 instances of this occur in Final Destination 5. Nathan kills Roy, receiving his few remaining days. Roy having an illness that would have killed him shortly anyways. Nathan thus dies shortly after, but not in the original order of death planned by Death. Only as the time of death for Roy originally. Peter kills Block, avoiding Death's schedule. Similarly, Sam kills Peter, avoiding Death's schedule. Sam dies shortly after, as Block had been scheduled to die not long after his actual death. There is a little bit of a rift here, as Sam was not technically killing someone who wasn't meant to die in the first place. Yeah, that's interesting. Whether this plan actually does cheat Death is unknown, as it can be presumed that you would have to keep killing to keep gaining life when you reach the end of the lifespan of the previously killed person. If that is true, the killer would presumably be arrested for being a serial killer, then die in prison of old age anyway. I mean, that's kind of a dumb statement, not if you're smart. If you're smart enough to cheat Death, you're smart enough not to be arrested. I mean, there's tons of serial killers that have never been caught. Suicide. If it's not your time to die, Death won't let you kill yourself. Now, this is very, very curious. This is another one of these wrinkles. So, yeah, this is really interesting. This happened to Eugene Dix and George Lanter. It was also tested by Carter Horton when he wanted to gain control of his life. He drove his car quickly through the traffic trying to kill himself. He would probably kill Clear, Alex, and Billy too, but stopped on train tracks waiting for the train to claim his life. Eventually, he said, "It's not my time to die," and unsuccessfully tried to start his car. However, it's revealed in Final Destination 5 that if it's not your time to die, you can't suicide. But the other survivors may be able to kill you. This cannot be proven since Peter didn't succeed in taking Molly's life, and that it was Peter's turn to die anyway. I mean, you have to admire the filmmakers here, though, because even in some of these theories, there are several different plausible options, and they don't definitively reveal which one. I mean, this might be the franchise that never actually commits to establishing rules so it can't break them. That's kind of smart in a way. We got to tip our hat here. I mean, this is really, really curious stuff. I mean, again, this is what makes this franchise so much fun to not just to watch, but to think about the theories behind it. In Final Destination 3, Ian McKinley had a theory that involves Newton's third law of motion. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. If the last person on the list committed suicide, then the rest of the survivors would truly beat Death's design. However, as last one on the list, Wendy Christensen never listened to Ian anyway. It's unknown whether or not Ian's idea is true. However, in an alternate ending of The Final Destination, the last one on the list, Nick O'Bannon, thought he could defeat Death by committing suicide. He jumped out of the mall, landed on a police car, and was killed. Nick's action revealed the result of Ian's theory. After Nick's death, Lori Milligan and Janet Cunningham, who were the only survivors left on the list, were crushed by an air conditioning unit. This shows that even if the last person on the list kills themselves, the rest of the survivors still can't beat Death. However, seeing as this happened in an alternate ending, it's not meant to be considered canon. You know, again, I have to really tip my hat to these filmmakers because they don't commit to any of the theories, but they have enough alternate endings and deleted scenes to both to support the possibility of alternate theories. I mean, this is this is wild stuff here. I mean, this is just crazy here. Just the intricacies here, and the non-committing to any of these possible theories. Also, in an alternate ending for Final Destination 1, Alex Browning ended up committing suicide by sacrificing himself in order to save Clear Rivers. In that ending, both Clear and Carter ended up living. However, it should be noted that Clear was pregnant with her and Alex's baby, thus bringing the new life rule into effect. So it was unknown if it was Alex's death, Alex's suicide sacrifice, or the new life that saved them. Not to mention that this ending is not canon. I mean, does any other franchise have this many alternate endings? Stalemate. While it did not defeat death, Clear was able to bring herself and death to a stalemate by locking herself away in an asylum. She could not leave and death could not get her, implying she would live until she died of old age if she stayed there, thus indicating that while death would get her when she died of old age, it would be on her terms, not death's. And again, that's where I have a major problem. Not to mention, death could have created some kind of earthquake that only affected like that particular wing of the asylum. There could have been fires. A lightning strike could have hit that only her room. I mean, there's so many ways death could have got her in that room. It's just that's one of the biggest problems for me with this entire franchise. Making a deal with death. As seen in Final Destination Looks Could Kill, so this is one of the books, Stephanie Pulaski makes a deal with death to get her face back by taking the life of her friends. Death spares her from his list and restores her looks as long as she works for him, indicating that death is willing to make deals to remove someone from his list, but only for as long as they do his bidding. As soon as Sherry changes her mind and saves someone Death was intending to kill in childbirth, Death runs her over and kills her. So she actually has conversations with Death in the book. So that is curious. And again, some people think the books aren't canon, so yeah. Here's a comment from a user. You can't really cheat death. It might skip over you, but it always comes back. You either die then or you die later. The longest living Final Destination characters were Kimberly Corman and Thomas Burke, who lived up to 4.5 years, until they both died by a wood chipper owned by Brian Gibbons, father who died in the ending of Final Destination 2, who had been saved by Rory earlier from being hit by a car and later killed by a faulty barbecue. I think death sends these premonitions for fun or just giving them their correct time to die. It would be like a game of chess, but we all know in the end that death will come back like karma. Yeah, 4.5 years is a lot, though. I mean, there's clearly more information and more rules that we're missing. Unless you want to argue they were always meant to die in the wood chipper, and all the premonitions and all the other actions were just leading them there, because they weren't supposed to die earlier, so the premonition is a way to prevent them from dying earlier. I mean, it's just crazy. Leaphart posted this in 2012. Here's my theory. Fate and death have a game where fate sends a vision to one of the people on death's list. I think it's like a game of chess and the survivors are the pawns. And they play the game. When fate loses, death takes one of the survivors. If fate wins, it makes death skip one of the people. So that would mean that death is not the only entity in this universe. Here's another comment from 2019. There are two explanations which seem likely here. One, some benevolent or maybe sadistic entity sends the premonition in order to save the survivors, only for death to feel cheated and hunt them down. This makes sense when you consider the effort death goes to claim the lives of its escapees. Once the survivors have avoided their intended deaths, their second and actual deaths are normally the result of some convoluted, highly coincidental series of events, such as Ashley and Ashlyn, who died because of a melting smoothie, a loose shelf, and a phone call. This could reflect the effort death is putting in to reclaim its victims. 2. Death itself is the sadist. When planning a massive disaster such as the ones at the start of each movie, death deliberately sends one of the victims a premonition with the expectation that they will save themselves and others, for it to psychologically torment and then slaughter at its own desire. As well as the overly extravagant deaths, this would explain some of the other foreshadowing, such as Wendy's photos, as another device for death to torture its victims. This would also explain why death sticks to its intended order even after the victims escape the initial disaster. Yet another mechanism to toy with its prey. Finally, when this order is changed by intervention, death could be punishing the remaining survivors for intervening by accelerating their deaths to before that of the victim they have just saved. Thus, death enjoys a sadistic game of, as Bloodworth calls it, cat and mouse, and possibly even sets up one major disaster to finish off the victims of the previous one. Example, the end of Final Destination 5 being the start of Final Destination 1. Both the endings of Final Destination 3, the tube crash, and Final Destination 4, the lorry through a cafe, are reasonable possibilities for a premonition-altered disaster. Yeah, so if death is capable of these disasters, I just don't see how Clear Rivers... So the only explanation for that is Clear Rivers was always supposed to die when she was supposed to die, and whether or not she was in the asylum had no effect on anything. That's the only way for that not to be a plot hole. Court of Public Opinion says, many elements and forces, death is just one, they must all balance. Yeah. Alright, let me finish up here. The Final Destination series. Death does not appear to be above killing others to hasten its acquisition of survivors, with Tom Gaines theorizing the entity is perfectly willing to sneak souls when the opportunity to do so arises. There have been mixed theories in what death will do if the survivor with premonitions deliberately kills him or herself despite not being next on the list. Okay. And Tom Gaines is a character in the Final Destination novel Dead Man's Hand. It should be noted that in Final Destination 3, it took 5 months after Ian's death for Train 081, and that's just 180 in different order, to happen, meaning that in the alternate ending of Final Destination, the reason Clear and Carter survived is because the scene showed could have been before 5 months passed, or because Clear gave birth to a baby, as it was mentioned in Final Destination 2, that if someone who was supposed to die in an accident but survived and gave birth, all the remaining survivors would live. William Bloodworth himself said that only new life defeats death. So if he really knows the rules, then that should work. Unless he doesn't know the rules. I mean, we have no idea how reliable Bloodworth even is. So some people are pointing out here on the Final Destination Reddit that Kimberly in Final Destination 2, she actually hears Bloodworth's voice as Death. Huh. That's interesting. So apparently in the novel Looks Could Kill, the premonitions came from a woman who fell in love with a god. The god gave her the power of premonition, but when she fell for another, he made it so that nobody would ever believe her. She would see horrific events like her sisters being murdered or herself being sold into slavery, but nobody would believe her, and she was unable to do anything as they happened. So if it was genetic, I wonder if the new movie ties into that novel. So basically, there's three main theories here. One, that there's another force other than death that's responsible for the premonitions, or it's death itself playing with its food, or it's simply heightened awareness that anybody can develop. So possibly genetic, etc. So are there any other possible theories accounting for the premonitions? Those are the only three I can think of. Can anybody think of a fourth one? Those are the only three I can think of. Let's do a poll here. So what is responsible for premonition? So either another force or entity, fate, a force of good, angels, whatever, or death itself, or simple awareness, either genetic or not. So everybody can vote in the poll here, see what all the listeners think. So a user since deleted said, don't the comics books sort of go into this in a few different ways? One of which implies the people who have the premonition are somehow tied to the characters themselves. Like all the people who have premonitions have some sort of shared power that Death ultimately uses to set up timelines in where he fairly obtains their souls. Timelines is the one thing I never see folks talk about. How the Final Destination films basically have confirmed lives, dies, timelines, and some directors have confirmed this as a way to flex around with the continuity between films. So is this like alternate universe theory added here? So, but this would still fall under death being the source of the premonitions, simply utilizing, giving the premonitions to specific people to help death, to help death. Here's another interesting post from Death Aflame. My theory is that when death gets lazy and cheats people out of their lives, that's when the premonitions start. For instance, death essentially gave up with creating elaborate deaths specifically for Sam and Molly and just went expletive it and blew up the plane. This laziness resulted in more than just Sam and Molly dying. Death cheated Alex and company out of their lives. This resulted in Alex getting a premonition about the plane's destruction. However, because Alex and company were meant to die, death now has to target them out of principle, which starts a cascade from Final Destination 5 to Final Destination 2. That's curious. So are the premonitions a counterbalance of the universe to punish death? And then death has to go out of his way. I mean, that's curious. With all of these unseen forces and entities, that's actually a really good theory. That's a really good theory there. Here's another explanation from Journey TTP. I have a headcanon that life gives the premonitions to one of the people who are about to experience it and at least lengthen their lives a little longer. If death prioritizes death, then life prioritizes life. That's just my theory. I've never seen the book or movies, but I just wanted to comment that. So this is someone who hasn't seen the books, who hasn't seen the movies or read the books. That's very curious. So basically, it's not necessarily even about winning or losing. It's simply about life fighting for life to extend it and death fighting for death to end it. So it's not necessarily about preordained or destiny. It's simply about the fight for life and the fight for death. That's a really good theory, actually. That might be my favorite thus far, and it came from somebody who supposedly didn't see any of the movies or read any of the books. That's pretty cool. So here's another interest. This is a comment from 2 years ago. Everyone that was on Death's list shares a common ancestor, Juliet Collins. The Final Destination series is fairly formulaic. Someone has a vision, saves a group of people from a disaster, then they all die. By the time the series ended with Final Destination 5, there had been 115 people on Death's list, including 14 clairvoyants. Alex Browning, Kimberly Corman, Wendy Christensen, Nick O'Bannon, Sam Lawton, Jess Golden, Juliet Collins, Patty Fuller, Danny King, Allie Goodwin Gaines, Sherry, Jack Curtis, Carly Hagan, and an unnamed narrator. I believe all of these people are related. This is kind of curious because this was posted 2 years ago. I wonder if it has anything to do with Bloodlines, which is coming out now. The earliest known list took place in Destination Zero with Juliet Collins. So this is a book. In 1888, Juliet goes to a seance located at number 4 Mornington Crescent. Juliet has a vision of the building exploding and encourages 6 other people to leave. They all end up dying with the exception of Juliet Collins. She drowns in the Thames River but is revived. In the Final Destination universe, this counts as dying. So Juliet Collins is able to have children and eventually move from London to the U.S. In Looks Could Kill, in this book, Death explains why people have premonitions. Quote, centuries ago, as mortal things reckon time, something like a god loved a mortal woman. His love for her was so great he gifted her with second sight. But the woman scorned the god thing, so it turned what had once been a gift into a curse. Her vision was perverted so that she could see the future clearly, but was fated to never be believed by those who sought her counsel. The oracle was doomed to see her brothers slain, her sisters raped, and her city sacked, but was helpless to alter the course of events. She even foresaw her own enslavement and murder, but could do nothing to prevent them. Since that time, her tortured spirit has roamed the earth, seeking a chance to speak its auguries of disasters to those who might heed them. End quote. Juliet Collins being at a seance is why she was able to see the future. The seance allowed the ghost to communicate to Juliet the disaster that awaited her. Death goes on to explain, quote, you have disrupted the schemata, the master plan by which all things are kept in balance on this plane of existence. Because of your meddling, there are numerous souls living past their predestined harvest. Such dissonance to the master plan threatens to throw all of creation off kilter. It falls to me to correct the imbalance created by so many lives escaping my clutches. The repercussions could very soon be catastrophic, as these lives exist outside the schemata, interacting with people they were never meant to meet, doing things they were never intended to do. So many loose threads creating even more loose threads. Soon they will jam the loom, and the very fabric of reality will begin to shear and tear, end quote. So is this Death being the good guy? If we factor the novels into the canon, does this mean that Death is the protagonist, trying to save the entire universe and the fabric of reality from those who escaped the plan and threw everything out of balance? Juliet Collins was never supposed to survive. She brought kids that never should have existed into this world, and her descendants interact with more and more people and have kids, creating more problems. In an attempt to kill off this bloodline, which should not exist, Death causes disasters made specifically to end their lives. However, the spirit that gave Juliet Collins the first premonition continues to watch over the family, giving them premonitions. She was unable to save herself, so she attempts to save the descendants of Juliet. It's canon that one of Juliet's descendants is Patty Fuller. Wendy Christensen and Kimberly Corman are cousins. Nora and Tim Carpenter are mother and son. Wendy and Julie Christensen and Danny and Louise King are pairs of siblings. Death has been established to go after families, and all 115 people who have been on Death's list are part of the same family descended from Juliet Collins, and therefore they should have never existed. The reason they were spared and put on Death's list is because they should have never existed in the first place. And the reason Death is so desperate to kill them is because the longer they exist, the more reality crumbles. So, wow. Does that explain everything? And so basically, it's kind of curious. So obviously the filmmakers are aware of the books, and maybe they even read this post here 2 years ago, and that's what brought about the new movie Bloodlines. But it is kind of curious. What are the chances that all of these people in these situations are all related, though? I mean, that stretches credulity that these random groups of strangers are all descendants. Like, why would they be all in the same spot? a follow-up post here by Ace Fighter says, I think this is a great theory with one small flaw. I don't see any reason to think everyone was a descendant. For one, if they were, why didn't everyone get visions? I think it's more logical that only the clairvoyants are descendants of Juliet. Everyone that gets caught up in Death's mission to wipe them out is just collateral damage. And anyone that survives an attempt they would have been caught in is added to Death's list, not because they're also related, but because Death doesn't like to be cheated. Using the first movie as an example, anyone could have listened to Alex and gotten off Flight 180. But that doesn't mean some random dude halfway up the plane, had he listened, is a distant relative of Alex. Yeah, that's a good point. So only the clairvoyants are relatives. That's why they get their clairvoyant based on the genetics. And anyone who simply becomes entangled with them gets added to the list because they weren't supposed to exist in the first place, the clairvoyants. So that kind of makes sense. That makes sense. Is this the final theory we have so far? I can't come up with anything better. This kind of checks most of the boxes. This is, yeah. Matari Sensei says it just doesn't make sense that Death is the only entity. Well, Death doesn't have to be the only entity in this, and by this theory, Death isn't the only entity because there are other gods or whatever that can give premonitions. But it's simply so it is kind of interesting if Death is the good guy here, trying to restore balance in the universe. So yeah, I mean, that's all I have for now. We could rank the films here to close this out. I kind of like... I think 4... Like I said, I think 4 is the most interesting plot-wise. But obviously, it's just not a very good movie. Just not a very good movie. I would have to say 1 would probably be my favorite, simply because that's also the first one I watched and the originality. Now, here's where it gets tough. Because I liked 2 and 3. 3 is kind of more fun than 2, but 2 is probably the better movie. So I don't know how to rank those there. I really didn't like 5 like most people liked 5. I don't know if I want to say 4 is better than 5, though. So I'm going to go 1. Oh, it's so hard. I can establish 1 as number 1. Now, between 2 and 3, 3's more fun, 2's the better movie. I don't know how to rank that. Maybe I might have to cheap out and say I'm gonna rank them tied because 3's more fun, but 2's the better movie. And then I would put, man, this is gonna hurt a lot of people. I think I might have to put The Final Destination Part 4 ahead of 5. I just wasn't a fan of 5. So that's my ranking. I got 1, and then I'm gonna go tie for 2 and 3. Then I'm gonna go 4. Then I'm gonna go 5. And then obviously, as soon as I see Bloodlines, I will do a follow-up episode here. Yeah, 3D is pretty cool. Oh, hey, Clark. Yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed another edition here in this deep dive into the Final Destination franchise. And I think that theory that I just read, that's the best anybody has come up with thus far. So, thanks again for joining us. If you want to help support the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share. Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.